Hello, everyone. Welcome here.
Welcome.
Welcome.
Awesome. So today we will be talking about building a data-driven organization with FME and Esri. I am joined today by Dale Lutz. Dale, would you like to introduce yourself?
Sure. I'll just also mention that Phil Vera, who has been working with the FME ArcGIS integration for almost 15 years, is busy in the back room somewhere without a camera, but he's ready to do Q&A. So if you have any questions along the way, Phil is standing by. My name is Dale Lutz. I'm one of the two co-founders of Safe Software. And in 2007, I believe, I made my one and only trip to New Zealand and met Bruce Harold in a deluge of rain. And we had a wonderful start to our friendship. Bruce is a longtime FME expert as well as an ArcGIS expert. And today, well, has been working at Esri for a very long time. Bruce, how about you introduce yourself?
Hi, I'm Bruce. I'm the product manager for Esri's Data Interoperability extension, which is our repurposing of FME technology inside ArcGIS. So it's one of my hats, and I'm very pleased to be here today to show you some things which I think will be fun and useful.
Thanks so much, Bruce. Thanks for joining us today. And it's great presenting with you again. Years ago, we used to do this every year at the Esri UC. Haven't done that for a while, but this is sort of like reuniting Jerry Lewis and Dean Martin, maybe, if anybody knows who that is. But you're in for a treat today, everyone. Bruce has some really interesting examples that show real value. And Bruce is a little too humble to admit it, but he's also a prolific blogger. And at the end, we'll give you the link to his series. It has a bunch of interesting topics and deeper dives you'll want to follow along.
So at this point, we will turn off our webcams just to save on some bandwidth, as we do have some upcoming demos. And I'll hand things back to Dale to introduce our agenda for today.
Thanks, Elizabeth. All right, in terms of today's agenda, we've already done our introductions. Now I'm going to spend a few moments just looking at what FME is and who Safe Software is. And then we'll look at how ArcGIS really is accelerated or amplified when you combine it with data integration. And then Bruce will take it away with a series of 5 really interesting demos that show some real value. And then we'll wrap up with some resources for everyone.
Perfect. So just before we dive into things, just a quick intro to Livestorm if this is your first time in the platform. We have the React emoji button. Share your reactions with us throughout using that. We have the questions in the chat tab. So keep letting us know where you're tuning in from today. We love to see that. And questions. As Dale mentioned, we do have Phil on the back end answering questions that come in. And then we will have live Q&A at the end with Bruce, Dale, and Phil as well. So definitely drop those in as we go. And if you do have any audio or video issues throughout, you can click the help button on the bottom left for 4 simple troubleshooting steps.
Okay, thanks, Elizabeth. Let's get into it. So when you combine ArcGIS Pro, Esri's flagship product, and FME, Safe Software's flagship product, you really end up fueling data-driven innovation with seamless integration across your enterprise. And so today we're going to look at how you can unleash the power of data by streamlining GIS and ETL integration. And you end up with a variety of very superior, time-saving, high-fidelity, high-value solutions. And that's what Bruce is going to be walking us through. And so just some motivation for this can allow some common pain points to be smashed or broken through and result in really what we would call data-driven excellence for your organization by bridging data gaps, by automating efficiency, unlocking insights that are lying there and in open quotes, dark data or data that you're just not using enough. And above all, finding a simpler way to deal with the complexity that is the landscape your organization likely finds itself in. A few words about Safe Software and FME. We've been around for almost 30 years, not quite. We have a large number of customers worldwide, many, many partners, huge community of active FME users. And what isn't on this slide, a long-time partnership with Esri going back arguably to 1996 in some fashion or another, and most recently for many, many years with the Data Interoperability extension. We create this thing we call the FME Enterprise Integration Platform. We have FME Form, formerly known as FME Desktop, FME Flow, formerly known as FME Server, and Flow Hosted, formerly known as FME Cloud. And of course, Esri takes our FME form and puts their brand on it and sells it under Bruce's direction as the data interoperability extension, which Bruce is going to be showing today. Bruce, is it okay if I call it data interop? Is that allowed?
It's totally allowed, Del.
Okay, it's a little bit easier to say. Friends of it call it data interop. And so in terms of some of these case studies, I think with that, I am going to hand it over to Bruce to take it away. You've got a series of, I think there's 5 interesting demos and case studies that you're going to share with us. Over to you, Bruce.
I do. Thanks very much, Dale. I'll just share a screen here and we'll get going. Now, I've got a couple of maps on the that are visible now. I'll get to those in detail in a minute, but first we'll keep the lawyers happy and say that we're using this data from the City of Vancouver by permission under their very generous open government license. What we are looking at is building permit information in 2 modes, if you like. I've imported the data, which I obtained from the city's site there, as GeoJSON. I did just a normal ETL, that you would say, of GeoJSON, and I've symbolized it with data coming from the data. While we're here and we're looking at this lovely map, I could, whoops, I actually clicked a pop-up there. If I dug into the GeoJSON in detail, if I was feeling so inclined, I could have a look at the properties in there in JSON terms. I would notice things like a couple of the elements in the JSON are in fact arrays. So that's the kind of thing I might want to deal with. Let's go through and do that, show how that might be reflected in detail in the map. And I'll show you why we're using 2 in a minute. So if I click on that building permit there, it's an alteration, but it's pretty busy in terms of what the property use is going to be. So this is where the array needs to be expressed in ArcGIS, and I'm going to show you how that has been done. So a couple of elements there have a one-to-many lookup table situation which needs to be handled. So back to the map. What are we looking at here? So I decided that because of the data modeling that needs to happen and the data-driven symbology, I would initially put my data into file geodatabase, my project geodatabase, before publishing it to my sharing format, which is a feature service. So that's the map on the left. It's data coming from a file geodatabase. On the right is the published edition of the data coming from, in fact, ArcGIS Online is my active portal at the moment. So to do that 2-step process, I initially developed this workspace. I'll enlarge it a bit so we can see what's going on there. It takes the GeoJSON I mentioned. I do some housekeeping on the fields. There's a percentage of the records that don't have geometry. So I'm using what will be for everybody out there a new feature for the geocoder transformer. It lets me use a locator view to do my geocoding into very tight constraints. So that stops like zingers going to Vancouver, Washington. There's the URL for the geocode service. And then I write out the data to my base feature class and a couple of lookup tables. Now, if I go back to that extent there, if I go back to the map, I'll see, well, here we go. The data's in my file geodatabase. There's my building permits, and there's a couple of tables, which are the lookup tables. And I made relationship classes in the geodatabase to power the relationship, so the feature where you look up the building use and a specific use. So I've got some smarts there that you will only author inside a geodatabase, but I'm able to express them through into the feature service. Now, at the point that you have the data in the feature service, that is all FME needs to know to maintain your data from that point on. It can't be used to author symbology or the relationship class or pop-up behavior like I've done over here. For that's a building permit, and it's got a specific field that I highlight. None of those things are anything FME knows about, but we can certainly maintain the data. So back to my, if I can show you an zoomed out view, here's my initial workspace. I have a child workspace, which differs, if you can see, only in the fact that off to the right, I have a different mode of writing out. I'm writing out only the deltas, and my export is not to a feature class, it's to an ArcGIS Online feature service. So if you remember back and looking at the view of the data coming from the city, there's 2,049 features today, changes daily. There aren't that many in the service when I read it to change the text, so I got to add 16 to get to 2,049. So in a matter of seconds, which I just ran this a minute ago, 24 seconds, I've maintained my data in my feature service, and really my work is done.
So Bruce, just to ask, what you're doing there is maintaining by updating only the things that changed, and so everything.
That's right.
Yeah,
it's a very efficient write.
Yes,
I skipped talking about the locator view concept here. Did mention that it's possible you get zingers when you're geocoding. It's just a fact of life. To constrain your geocoding to within an area that you care about, you can make the locator view functions just the same as the normal ArcGIS Online geocode service, except to constrain your results to where you care about.
Right. So no bad. That's one way of fighting bad data.
No bad geocode. So I can do that because I can. I've got the power of ArcGIS behind FME technology, and I know how to tune my geocoding to get best quality results. So there's a few things there that I want to finish with. My overall topic is, you need to, or you can benefit from using the power of ArcGIS in Pro to author your data model. You can get high quality uplift of the data while you're doing your ETL. And if your publication and sharing format is a feature service, you can write it very efficiently from that point on with pure FME technology. So that was my initial intro into it was fun to surf the maps. You can see where this changes. Like that blue dot on the right didn't exist a month ago when I took the first snapshot. So this is the kind of thing you can find by browsing the data.
Can you snoop at it, Bruce? What is it?
Oh, what was it? Yeah, that it's an addition or alteration. So we're allowed to show this data. It tells you who's owning it and what they're going to do with it and all the rest of it. So they're the beauty of public data.
They're removing a stove plug, Bruce. They're removing a stove plug.
Single dwelling. So somebody's building a house there in the middle of town.
They're doing a reno. That's good for the economy. Exactly. That's good.
It is.
So Bruce, should we hop back to the slides for a moment?
Yeah, let's do that.
And I'll just do a recap. So what Bruce just showed us was this first example about why does it make sense to do ETL alongside a GIS. And you saw the incredible power that he has with symbology and pop-ups and relationship classes, that the maps and the model can be done. All in that is inside of the power of Esri. And then he can use the tools that FME and Data Interop provide to move the data in. And he can do it in 24 seconds, I think, to keep that thing update.
So what was it? 2,000 features in 24 seconds. Why would you not do that on the frequency you need?
Yes. Yeah. So should we look at the next example, Bruce? Do you want to talk us through that one?
Okay. So very often the FME side of the house or the client to some data managed by ArcGIS does not have rights to the data that they want to see, or the processing that can happen in the ArcGIS enterprise or online space. The technology that comes to the rescue here is what we currently call a web tool. It used to be called a geoprocessing service. And it lets you access private data and the processing you need on that private data and retrieve the data into your FME environment or potentially some other environment as allowed by the data owner. So my example here is going to be, on the left here, I'm showing a data from in the city of San Francisco. Oh, by the way, I need to keep the lawyers happy again. This is the open data site for the city of San Francisco. Down here is a public domain attribution license, so we're good to go there. So on the left, this is my private data. I own it, I manufacture it. It happens to be, in real life, address points. On the right, in real life, comes from the same provider, is some data which has been enriched by various overlay operations by the city, and that's what I want to retrieve and add to my address points. But in real life, let's say in pretend life, I don't have access to that data. There's no way I can do the geoprocessing, of which FME is perfectly capable, because I simply don't have access. So what can I do if I am the two organizations who want to work together? All right, so what I've done on the ArcGIS Enterprise side, and this is pure Esri technology, is I've made a model in our model builder technology. So analogous to FME, it's no code, it's visually programmed. I'll walk you through the processing. The tool will accept zipped Esri JSON. It'll unzip it. It'll turn it into regular features. It'll do some geoprocessing, in my case, just picking up some attributes on proximity. And it'll turn the data around and return it to the client as Esri JSON again. So pretty simple processing, but this step here, where I'm just doing a spatial join, could be anything, could be very rich geoprocessing indeed. So I've published that tool as a web tool, and I'll go over here and I'll use it. So this is a big fat client, ArcGIS Pro, in the nicest possible way, of course, handling the data. And if I run the tool here, if I go to my history so I can watch the action, in about 8 seconds, I think it takes on the server. It takes my zip GeoJSON and gives it back to me as processed data with, and I didn't show it here, but a lot of attribution added. Let's go back to the map so that we see what's going on here. Those things here, so parcel number on down is added to the data. So here we go. All these fields have been added to a packet of GeoJSON Esri JSON that is returned to me. Fantastic. So that's the tool. How do I use it if I'm just an FME shop? Well, let's go back to my project workspace here, and we'll open up the FME technology in question. Takes a few seconds. Okay, so let's run it. I'll explain what's going on while it's working. I'm doing the same things you saw me do in Pro. I'm picking up an Esri JSON file. I'm sending an HTTP request to my web tool, because there's always a REST endpoint generated in a web tool. Let's kind of got some fun action going on here. The web tool is asynchronous, so I have to loop and wait for the result to finish. So you see the numbers incrementing here. That's every 2 seconds I get another attempt to retrieve the finished data. It always seems to what takes 6 seconds to chew on the data, and the last 2 second interval it returns the data to me. And at that point here, after my looping and my custom transformer, advanced topic there, we're not going to go into, I do some housekeeping here, and the data is sent back to me as 963 features, which I write dynamically out to a feature class.
Bruce, I noticed it took 23 seconds. Does everything you do with Data Interop take 23 seconds?
Only today, Dale. Only today.
Fantastic.
Fun facts here. Be fearless when it comes to working with web tools that are hosted by Esri. Esri is your friend to collaborate with between organizations. Just tell people what you want, and it'll be able to be engineered for you. And across the privacy barrier there, you can do clever things like looping and waiting for an asynchronous job to finish. And I'm doing some housekeeping there. I left my email open, so I got an email. Sent an email to myself that the job worked. So that's pretty nice. All right, and then I wrote the output. So just quit the tool here and look at the output. We'll just go back and I'll refresh my geodatabase. We'll never remember where that exactly is. Here's the data here. Add to current map. And I will edit the symbology. Nice red dots here. If I identify a nice big red dot, which is my edited data, I'm getting everything that I asked for. That one happened to be null because it was off the map somehow. There's my enriched data, all turned around nicely, privately and efficiently. So that was a web tool and how to access it, a pure FME. Now, we'll move right along here so we get through our quota of demos here. That was a private API access to an Esri endpoint. There's a world of public APIs accessible to you as well in a similar fashion. So I'm going to show an example of how I use one of those. So let's get my map up on the screen here again. So here is a map of where my phone went in March of this year. So of course it was attached to me almost all the time. Okay, so if you have an Android device and you flip the right switches, you can download this information for yourselves. So obviously you're working around Redlands, making a few trips here and there. Second half of March, there was an event in Palm Springs, which I helped hold up, which is our Dev Summit. You should by now be noticing that the paths between waypoints are kind of clunky and ugly. But I went to LAX, and from there I went to New Zealand, and my phone, of course, came with me. And here we go, same story. I'm able to see where I went, but it's not a very pretty map. It's not a good story to tell. What I want to do instead is make the routes real. So if I go here to another town, was it obvious before? I'll just turn this activity segment back on. So I took a boat ride out to some islands. It's one thing I did, but this is the real route I took. It's a much, because I'm following the road network. Now, my Pro session in FME has no concept whatsoever of routing a road network through a web API unless you tell it how. So let's go more. Let's go nuts. Bay of Islands. I'm just so engrossed. It was such a fun trip. But anyway, how did I do that? Turn my data, which was, zingers all over the place, into the real routes that I took. And we'll go to the last stop, which is a town famous for its giant fiberglass carrot.
Did I hear you say a fiberglass carrot, Bruce?
Yes, a giant fiberglass carrot.
Wow. Well, I come from near the world's largest Easter egg, but I don't know if that's as good as the biggest carrot.
Okay, so the real routes there. So how do I leverage some API to improve my data the way that I need? Now, I was inspired by helping a colleague who works for a distributor in somewhere else in the world, who in fact used a Google endpoint. But today I'm going to use an Esri endpoint. And what the endpoint needs, it's our solve endpoint for a routing service, is it wants to know the start and stop XY coordinates, the time of day that you left, and how you like to travel, your corporate preferences. So this workspace here reads your corporate preferences from your ArcGIS Online environment, figures out the geometry, and sends a solve call to our routing network there. And our friend Esri JSON is returned again, and simply I just write the values out. So that is a way to use a publicly available API to do some uplift of data from your FME environment and talking back into your ArcGIS environment.
Fantastic.
So that was fun. Okay, was there anything more to tell about this thing here? So I'm surprised how much your phone knows about you. So we won't go into details here. Do some shopping here. So what, but giant fiberglass carrots make your day when you've driven for hours and hours across country.
Do they sell carrot juice there at least, Bruce?
Probably. I bought the fresh variety, so they're good for snacking. They're quite different to the ones that are local here.
But you're making us. Is this webcast sponsored by Tourism New Zealand or what?
No, but if you're inspired to go and want to know some more about where might be a good spot to travel, just ask me.
I think we'll do that in the Q&A afterwards. I've going to queue up some things because I haven't been there since 2007 and I remember it fondly. So it's time to go again. Okay, so that was generic. We've done private web integrations and we've done a generic one. Let's see what else is up our sleeves. Custom formats. All right. Now, I can't make apologies for some of this topic being reasonably advanced. It is. And custom formats is another example of that. It's much easier than you might think. So if you're an FME person, you'll be familiar with the reader and writer galleries, which let you access all, if you like, the canned formats, and the some which are downloadable as packages from FME Hub. You can make your own. So this is the way that you can encapsulate your own smart processing and share it with the world. And you start from
ordinary formats that already exist. Create your smart processing, your ETL, persist the ETL as a custom format, and then it's just rinse and repeat from that point on.
You know, Bruce, one thing I often tell people that come from a database background is that a custom format is really an FME expression of what a database person would do with SQL to create a view. So it's really applying transformation to something that's already there, an existing thing, but the user of this only ever sees your rearranged output. And I suspect that's what you're going to show us right now.
It is. Okay, now here we have a part of the world. Let's go back, keep the lawyers happy again. What we're looking at here is, what we're going to look at here is National Weather Service data, which is public domain, generated by arms of the US government, and it's free to air. And there's a site you can go to and look at things like Canadian smoke plagues, Dale, and weather alerts, which is my topic today, and forecasts and stuff like that. So that's what we have that I want to show is how to bring that into ArcGIS without any effort.
As long as you don't blame Canada, Bruce.
No. Okay, so I've made a tool here which lets me use a format, and I'll show that this is just the normal gallery, right? So in here, there's the normal gallery of stuff. I've made a couple of formats which lean on the weather service endpoints, and one of them is weather alerts. So I'm going to use my weather alerts data, and I'm going to look at what's happening in Idaho. All right, so this tool I'm running here is just a model that uses the quick import system tool to go out and reach it for some data, and then it puts it into an in-memory feature class. So it's my equivalent of what used to be the interoperability connection functionality in ArcMap. Okay, so we're talking web here, so it takes a few seconds to retrieve the data through the API that's under the covers, and then it turns up. So in Idaho, there's some stuff happening there. So let's give it some kind of weathery look and feel, and I like that one there. It's got some transparency and it's a gray color. So here's today's word is cerulean, so that's my gray there. So that's the weather alerts that happening that are tagged for Idaho, but in fact they leak into adjacent states. That's just the way that works. I'll show you why in a second. So let's add another one here. Just to show you that it wasn't a fluke. We'll go next door to Montana.
So Bruce, while that's running, I'll mention I grew up in Alberta, and the weather television personality always talked about the Idaho high that's going to come to Alberta and give us good weather. So I'm a big fan of Idaho weather. Thank you, Idaho, for supplying your high pressure systems to us.
Yeah, it's very kind. Okay, they probably have a giant fiberglass potato somewhere, if my memory serves, analogous to our carrot. But anyway, so you can see I can simply use a custom format without any drama. There's quite a bit of weather alert going on there. I'll just say I'm going to change the symbology to be the same for both states there, so that it's not jarring on the eyes. I'll put these guys over here. So quite a patchwork of weather alerts coming from the National Weather Service. Now, if I identify them, you can see they're lighting up in groups. And if I look at the pop-up for the group there, there's that area description tells you how the geometry was acquired for that collection of their county boundaries. So there's names of counties which are used to generate geometry for the weather alerts that apply to those counties. So that's a big area description. That's where the geometry comes from. I'll show you how in a bit. There are other arbitrary polygons which aren't boundaries of counties, which don't have an area description. They just come through as real geometry. So there's some processing here that let me generate geometry from county identifiers and arbitrary polygons which were delivered for me. How did I do that? All will be revealed.
You're going to show us how the sausage is made.
I am, yes. Now this is okay, I'm using an API somewhere in the sky to do this, but in fact, a lot of custom formats are just dialects of JSON or CSV or Excel spreadsheets that people use again and again and again, and they're a lot simpler. But this is simply more fun for me, and hopefully give you some inspiration to do the same things. So I read some JSON from the Weather Service API. If it has geometry, it's in GeoJSON syntax. Luckily, the reader that I used can tell that, so I can test whether or not this feature has geometry. If it doesn't, so there's null geometry, I have to manufacture the geometry from the collections of county identifiers, so their FIPS codes. If it does have area geometry, I can just use it. So the stuff that doesn't have geometry, I make it, then I join it back based on its primary key. Then I just write it out to wherever it's going. In my case, feature class, in your case, could be wherever. So in summary, then, I've managed to hide all the complexity of detection of whether or not geometry exists and how to make it and how to merge things all back together again and just deliver the data with just a couple of clicks. And that I can share with my colleagues in a single file, and nobody needs to know what else was going on there. Just for completeness, I'm going to give a shout out to the Data Inspector app here, which is delivered in the suite of apps which we inherit from FME. I'll show another canned format from again, it's again weather related, because while I was looking at this, I thought, why not? Because it's quite interesting to do. This time my input is just a street address, or in this case, a point of interest address, the senior center in Bellingham, Washington.
You're not implying that that's where you and I are going to have our next meeting, Bruce.
I don't know. You know,
let's see what the weather's like.
We'll see what the weather's like. So, what did I forget on my lead in there? So, again, behind the scenes, there's just a workspace, an FME workspace that reaches out to an API, gets some data, and delivers what I want, which is a forecast. Now, why is it a funky shape? Well, NOAA told me that a weather forecast is good for about a 2.5 kilometer across area. I just pulled one out of thin air using Uber's hexagon technology at the appropriate scale, and that gives me some geometry to use.
Okay.
And then, so there's the plan every 4 hours or something, what the temperature is going to be, max and minimum, what the current temperature is. Right now it's mostly sunny. It's going to become cloudy, and there's a chance of rain within 24 hours.
Pretty much it's any possibility of weather we have available to us there.
Yeah. So yeah, they're hedging their bets, I guess. But a fantastic service and pretty simple to access once you learned a few tricks.
We should ask Elizabeth if she could queue up. I'm on record somewhere as having a webinar where I sang "It's All About the Hexagons, Baby."
Yeah, okay.
All right. Sure, we can dig it up.
So that's a couple of custom format examples. Your use case, like I said, is probably going to be a lot more prosaic. Oh, I've got a CSV standard, which I use in my organization all the time, or Excel spreadsheet, JSON, whatever it happens to be. But the sky's the limit, really. So that was that little topic.
Yeah, very well done, Bruce. Thanks so much. Okay. So you want to just recap that, and then I guess you're going to take us home by going to 3D.
Just to recap, so custom formats, did I even show? Let me go back. Yes, I did. So I forgot to say, though, I did show that workbench I had up, which created the geometry for the custom format. You save the workspace as a custom format. There's nothing special, no compilation stage or anything like that for the custom format. You just save it out as a custom format, then it becomes available to whoever you share the folder the file goes into. Okay, we will have another topic. It's not always appreciated that the FME technology and as used in data interop supports not just the 2D data that you've seen so far, but also 3D data, and beyond that, raster and imagery as well. So the full suite of geospatial major formats are supported. I could go on. There are some more too, like knowledge graphs, but one thing at a time. I've got to leave room for another seminar. So to next example, I'm going to show you sharing some 3D data. It's kindly, by permission of the City of Cambridge in Massachusetts. I will show in a second some building and bridge data right across the city, which is pretty densely built up. They need to share it with people who aren't GIS experts. They have packages which are CAD, or they're just pure visualization packages because they're architects. They're half artist rather than DBA. So they need to get their 3D data, which is very well curated by themselves, out to this audience without too much effort. So there are a handful of formats which they like to supply to people, and I'll show you a reasonably simple way to do it. Hopefully you can see this part of the city that I'm working in here. Let's go have a look at that. Was let me see, is downtown. It's always good to surf around. The thing I want to show here is the whole city. There's quite a bit of data that's being rendered there, so it might take a second. The way that they like to, the City of Cambridge like to deliver their data is in a tiled fashion. So what we will make available is exported format in this tile layout. Let me go back here, zoom back into town here. So, and the desired output is in a folder structure so that they can deliver, the city can deliver their data in a sensible mouthful per user. So what did I say there? I am in E3. So how do I do that? Well, let's open the tool there. That'll demystify everything straight away. So my ETL tool I built for the purpose. It is a model tool. It lets me read data in the organization repository. It says where I'm going to write out the data as a folder. Most importantly, it's a selection of formats which are written dynamically based on the user's choice here. So shapefile is our venerable shapefile, wavefront OBJ, Trimble SketchUp, Autodesk, CAD, and 3DS, all available, and there could be many more. Now, how does that look in terms of handling the whole of the city in one go? This is back to our friend Model Builder again. For those who don't know, what's happening here is pretty simple. Essentially, a multi-part clip. We have a thing here called an iterator, which iterates through each of those tiles in the index grid that the city want. Turns the tile into a JSON mouthful. Our friend Esri JSON is back, and my ETL tool takes the Esri JSON and does the clipping and exporting into the file of my choice. So a very simple processing model indeed. If we have time, and I think we do, I will show what the ETL tool looks like that does the work when called from the model. And you'll be amazed how simple this is. Takes a second to hydrate here. Okay, so there are a number of feature classes which are always available, but I just process them all identically. I do some work here to make sure that if a building's centroid is in the tile, then it gets exported. If the centroid is not in the tile, then it doesn't. That saves chopping buildings into little pieces. And I just write the data out with a dynamic format. So that's the entire processing smarts, if you like, to get all the data out for all the city in any format you want without more than a couple of clicks. So what does it generate? I've run it earlier. I can go back to what tile am I in here? This E3. Okay, go back over here. Go to E3. Add to the current map. Take a second to arrive. And so I've created their Autodesk drawing, and there's the whole tiles layout there. I'll just zoom out as AutoCAD, which Pro knows how to render, but doesn't know how to render OBJ or SKP or anything. All done perfectly in alignment with the spatial reference and ready to share with all the architects out there. So if I go back to full extent here, you see I've honored that business rule that if a building centroid is in the tile, the entire building gets shipped. If it's not, it doesn't.
The British call those hairy tiles.
That's right. I've heard that.
Yeah.
Okay, so that was a hint of some 3D power that's available. So what have we, just to recap, what have we gone through so far? Working inside ArcGIS Pro, so you can leverage not just the ETL capabilities of the technology, but things like symbology, relationship classes, pop-up behavior, and so forth, and you maintain very efficiently, say, a feature service. Working with a private high-powered web tool hosted by ArcGIS, so that's outside your organization. You can work with private data that's inside someone's organization. We've looked at a public API use where I improved the geometry of my waypoints where I and my phone went for a whole month. Then we looked at custom formats. It was kind of a funny use case for the weather forecast, but I hope you get the idea that the sky's the limit when it comes to encapsulating your processing in a custom format. And lastly, that have no fears about 3D data. You can send it wherever you need on demand and at scale.
In fact, Bruce, in a future release, you'd be able to write out a Revit file even. I
believe so.
Yeah.
Now, I tend to get excited by things that are down in the weeds, and Revit is one of them. So there we go. And note to self: I must visit Cambridge. It looks looks a nice town.
I was last there in 1988, I think.
Okay.
Might have changed.
At this point, we'll probably move to Q&A. I don't know. You can take it from here, Dale, with the slides.
Okay, yeah, we'll just, thanks so much, Bruce. Wow. I mean, there was so many great things you showed us there. And the great thing about a webinar is that if it happened too fast, for those of you watching, you can always get the recording off of our website and then watch it again in slow motion. And often, I think, Bruce, you'll be making at least some of these workspaces available as well for people to experiment with. I didn't actually check with you. Is that the plan?
That's the plan.
Good. So that'll be on the website as well. So as we wrap up, just a few resources and summing it all up, just by way of kind of conclusion, I got a few check marks we can walk through. I think you'll all agree that Bruce showed us some real data integration mastery today. So I'll give us a white check mark on a green background there as he explored the synergy of ArcGIS Pro and FME. And I hope you'll agree that these were streamlined workflows as compared to any other way of pulling this off. I think we'd also give Bruce a green check mark. Sorry, it's a white check mark on a green background for the innovation that he showed and really the empowering that this brings to the so-called citizen integrator. You don't have to be a Python wizard. You can go ahead and use these no-code tools to get data from APIs and package them up in custom formats or transformations and end up with robust and efficient solutions. And I think you'll all agree that this does unlock some amazing potential. And really, the only limitation is your imagination. And thank you, Bruce, for kind of giving us 5 different things to flex our imaginations around in the future. If you like what you saw today, there's a few things you might want to follow up on. We have an FME Accelerator. That's a 90-minute workshop on FME. Anything you learn there applies to data interop as well. So you'd be able to learn a lot that can work in any environment. If you're new to spatial data, you can grab our Dummies ebook. And we always have lots of webinars coming up, as well as an archive of past ones too. There's the FME Academy, which is a self-guided learning experience that you can take part in. That again, all the things there apply to data interop as well as FME. And FME Hub is where a lot of stuff lives. Bruce, you I know have contributed quite a bit to FME Hub over the years. Is that right?
I have, and I'm pleased to see some more of the functionality coming through in our imminent releases.
Yeah, so that's a great thing to be aware of as masters of FME data integration technology, like Bruce, share their fine work for others to basically stand on the shoulders of giants about. And We also have some links here that we can also chat out right now to Bruce's blog series, as well as a tutorial article about learning ETL in general with data interop. So you can follow up on that at your own pace. We have a community badge. Elizabeth, what does this mean?
Yeah, so as a thank you for joining us today, if you're part of the community, we have a badge code for you to redeem. A fancy new badge to add to your collection in the FME community. And if you aren't yet part of the community, we encourage you to check it out. It's a great place to network with other users and FME experts alike. Yeah,
lots of amazing materials exchanged there. And I think there's something like 29,000, some number like that, members of the community, of which several thousand are active. So the sun never sets on the FME community, that's for sure. And if you're not busy in September, why don't you swing around to Bonn, Germany, where we'll be hosting, together with our partner Conterra, our largest FME user conference that we believe we've ever done, the Peak of Data Integration 2023 in Bonn, Germany. It is not being held in that castle, though, I don't think. Is it, Elizabeth?
No, it is not.
I think that's the place. Is that where the marketing team is staying?
I wish. I hope so.
Anyway, it'll be an absolutely fantastic event with, I've actually had the chance to review the abstracts for the English sessions. There's about 90 of them, and they're really astonishing and amazing. And there'll be a separate track that's all in German for those that want to take part that way. And a great, great chance to see how people are using FME technology, data interop technology, all together to further basically making their organizations and the earth a better place. And I think with that, we'll go to some live Q&A. Is that what we're going to do, Elizabeth?
Yeah, absolutely. It's that time. It looks like we have about 10 minutes remaining here, a little bit more, and we'll take questions live from the audience.
So Phil, we'll put you on the spot. Phil Vera, come on down. Tell us what you saw.
All right. Can everybody hear me? Yeah. Thank you, Dale. Appreciate the intro, and sorry I wasn't able to join at the welcome, but we've been busy definitely on the Q&A, and thanks, Jenna, for joining last minute. We saw how many people were signed on. But I've got the floor. I'll take the opportunity to thank Bruce again for some really great workflows there that you've shown us how to integrate data interoperability into your GIS, and some really good patterns. And I'll put a plug in for your blog, which I think Dale showed already, because there's lots more where that came from, and people have been asking whether they've been able to download the workspaces, and those are all available on the blog. We will have to address, I guess, Bruce, how we get these workspaces packaged, but I think some of them have commonalities with what you already got there. Yeah, and I'll just say a quick thanks to everyone who joined and the great questions, and I'll hand it over to you, Bruce.
Hey, thanks, Phil. And yes, it's been fun today. I enjoyed putting the material together. I think I will hand it over to Elizabeth so it could be downloaded through your channel. Please do also go to the Esri community site for data interop, which I should have surfed to, but I have not. I'm guilty. But we'll get a link to that as well. You can have a look at many more of my blog posts and some of the techniques that I've arrived at to help people to get their work done.
Yeah, absolutely. I'll repost that in the chat now. And in the meantime, it looks like we have quite a lot of questions. So thanks everyone for dropping those in the panel there. I don't know if there's any in particular we might want to get started with here. I'll give everyone on the panel here a moment to look through.
Okay, yeah.
So there's a lot of questions in the chat. Elizabeth, do you just tackle them one by one?
Yeah, we can get started if any stand out that we want to highlight.
Matt Karowski is asking how much time did we save using data interop rather than ArcGIS and FME flow. What I showed, I could have done with pure FME and handed off some of the workflow into manual steps. Really, it's exactly equivalent. It is FME technology and data interop. What data interop does do, though, is bring access to FME technology into our geoprocessing environment. So that's really the gain I'm showing here.
I would add, Bruce, to Matt's question that with Flow, you won't get the model builder integration or the ability to publish those tools as a web tool to Enterprise.
That's right.
Quick export.
Is Model Builder, someone else asked, is Model Builder built into Pro? Where do you get it? It's delivered inside Pro. So it's just one of the environments where you can put workflows together. Okay. Paul is asking, can you play with the socket data? There is a TCP/IP socket reader and writer. It requires that the workspace be open. I haven't used it in anger. So I think technically the answer is yes, but you have to leave your tool open to make it work. Okay, so the rest here, we have to scroll down to another one. Ross is asking, I'll say, do you need to purchase Data and Drop and FME separately? Yes, they are separately sold. Esri channel sells Data and Drop and the Safe channel sells FME. Although I hasten to add, they're engineered to work together. Another questioner asked, what version of each of Data and Drop do I put on Esri server, and do they work with FME server? There was a world of yes there, but there is, of course, version issues or can arise. If your FME version is several years old and Data and Drop's newer, then there might be some new stuff in there that will break a workflow and vice versa. That's what you'd expect though between two machines with different versions of FME on them. It's no different. Okay.
So Bruce, is it worth mentioning to folks that when they create the ETL tool, they can choose to absorb the FMW within the tool or have it on the file system, and then they could open it from the workbench built into Pro separately, so they could manage it both from ETL tool and workbench.
Yeah, good point. So the way I tend to work, if it's a little job I'm not envisaging pushing down to the geoprocessing environment, I'll author a standalone FMW file and just stays on disk, and you can open it with the Workbench app anytime you want. If I want to share a whole toolbox with a number of different things, including a spatial ETL tool, I will then embed the FMW source into the tool, so it just travels with the TBX or ATBX. So that that's the practice that I adopt. If you a couple of people asked, what happens on the ArcGIS Enterprise machine when you're wanting to share tools there? Again, two modes. You can publish a web tool, which is GP service. I embed the source there and it just publishes up to the machine. I have, though, in the past copied FMW files over onto an enterprise machine with high uptime, and you can run them from FME.exe from there, like with Task Scheduler, and that's one way to do automations. Okay, Elizabeth, you want to pick another topic here?
I had seen, while Elizabeth looks, Jeff Johnson asking or pointing out that we use Data SF. He was impressed that and FME is used to load Data SF. That was the San Francisco data set, I guess, Bruce, that you showed?
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay. Cool.
Now it's demystified. Now I know for sure that the data was in fact curated using FME. It makes sense because it was easy to use.
Yeah,
but
for that,
I found the site. It's very good.
All right, looks like this is one of the couple yet to be answered. This comes from Paul. You can see it on the screen there. Can you run a UDP socket data stream through an Esri feature service directly? And he clarifies the UDP data stream is an FME server question.
Can we phone a friend?
We can absolutely phone a friend on that.
But, I mean,
TCP/IP socket, I know about it.
Yeah, UDP is like a networking protocol, but I don't know. Thankfully, Bruce, they seem not to be asking about FME, so I'd lob this one onto your plate.
Oh dear. Okay, I think I'll have to do some homework and get.
I mean, my gut is that those two technologies are not directly mixable.
Okay.
I can't remember if FME has a TCP/IP reader. I don't recall if we do for UDP. I don't think so. But in any case, that would not be directly into a feature service. And I have a bad feeling that I don't think there's going to be a way to merge those two. But Bruce's team would know.
Yeah, so not with Data and Drop extension, but there may be another way. The good old Python may come to our rescue here.
Yes, I would believe in Python.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
All right.
All right.
All right. I think we've gotten to them all at this point. I'm just scrolling through them. If the team wants to do the same, we'll just make sure there are no.
I see that in the chat, Chris Hammond just asked a good stumper, and this would be both a data interop as well as FME issue, and that's around feature data sets, and some data, when they run it through, isn't ending up inside the feature data set. And what I would say to Chris is, please follow up with our support team, because actually right now the team is looking at making it easier to work with feature data sets in data interop and in FME. And I have a hunch that this is kind of it's an error on our part in not making it easy for you to kind of make this work. I know that this can work, but we're not doing a great job making it work for you. So please follow up with your scenario to our support folks.
Okay, and I see another question from Falco. I'll start a live answer if that button works for me, Elizabeth. File database format was mentioned. Is this used more and more, etc.? Actually, this is a great topic. I'm picking mobile geodatabase, which is a SQLite version of geodatabase, to be a winner going forward. It's single file. It's easy to share. There's work, as well, Dale hasn't hinted, but I'll out him here that there's work going on using AI to help you express things like views into the various SQLite database formats. I'm picking that that's going to be a powerful way to deliver the power of the database into your ETL without you having to do the work, other than asking AI, hey, what's the output I want? It'll just deliver it. So file geodatabase, yes, it's powerful, it's shareable with the Esri portal technology. Mobile geodatabase, I see, is becoming increasingly important.
I'm just using all my self-control not to talk about the AI stuff, Bruce.
We're all going to be replaced, Dale.
I see that I only have 2 minutes, and we can say, oh, look at the time. That's what Elizabeth will say to cut me off.
Awesome. It looks like we've addressed all the questions. Just a final call out to our panelists in case there's anything else we want to address before we wrap up here.
Here, I've got one here. Mobile GDB performant as file GDB? The answer is yes, for sure.
Yeah, mobile GeoDB has a lot going for it. It's a nice SQLite, and as Bruce said, you can write SQL statements against it. It's a single thing to hand around, and here's hoping that it, and of course it can carry the full Esri geometry model, and so it's got a lot going for it. So we'll see in a year, Bruce, if it's caught on as much as you and I think it will.
Okay.
All right. Well, with that, I just want to give a huge thank you to Bruce Harold joining us as our guest speaker today. Bruce, we really appreciate all your time.
It's been fun.
Excellent. And thanks Dale and Phil and Jenna as well for all your work and joining us. And big thank you to our audience for joining today, whether it's the evening or the morning for you or the afternoon. So thanks everyone for joining all over.
Thanks, Elizabeth, for organizing this, and it's been tremendous. Yeah, you did a great job getting us all.
The chat code was geoprocessing ALF, it looks like. It's a GP tool. Yeah, Elizabeth, thanks so much for herding the cats that are Bruce and I and Phil.
Yeah.
You do a great job of keeping us all in line. And look at that, we're exactly on time.
Absolutely, my pleasure. We are. All right, everyone, thanks so much for tuning in, and bye for now.
Thank you.
Thank you.